British Columbia Supreme Court has granted Huawei's chief financial officer, Meng to be released on bail. This comes amid the detainment of former Canadian diplomat Michael Kovrig in China. Joining us this morning from St. Catharines, Ontario, is political science professor Charles Burton. Professor Burton, thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning, Ben.
So initially, Wang Zhou was arrested in Vancouver at the request of the United States, who is seeking her extradition. It was assumed that in retaliation, the Chinese government detained Kovrig. Now that Wang Zhou's been granted bail, what can we expect? Can we expect Kovrig to be released?
I don't think so, Ben. She's been granted bail, the idea being that she should reappear in the court in Vancouver to have her extradition treaty scheduled on February the 6th. I think as long as Ms. Meng is in Canada and has not been returned to China or transported to the United States, then Mr. Kovrig is still a card that the Chinese will want to potentially play. We've seen this before in the case of Kevin Garrett, who was held in retribution for a similar extradition case in 2014, and he was released once the Chinese national was sent to the United States. So there's precedent there in Canada and other countries, and I think Mr. Kovrig is probably in a very, very challenging situation, facing torture and interrogation, and of course separation from his family. And we haven't, as you reported, we haven't had any ability to contact him through our embassy. And
it's still unknown why they picked him, why they picked him up. Do you think that him being a former diplomat versus him being just a regular guy, regular Canadian visiting China, do you think that had that was one of the reasons he was chosen?
Yes, I mean, he's someone who is a friend and colleague of the people in the China section of Foreign Affairs who are dealing with the Chinese embassy on the Meng case. So it seems to be designed to inflict the maximum of emotional pain, as the colleagues in the Canadian Foreign Ministry will be fully aware of the very, very challenging conditions of sleep deprivation and other forms of restriction and torture that Mr. Kovrig is suffering, and that's bound to impact on their interaction with their Chinese counterparts.
Well, Canada has warned that they may increase travel risk levels to China for Canadians. What else is on the table? How else could Canada retaliate? What about China? What move could they pull next?
I think that there will be more, because the Chinese government is very, very keen that Ms. Meng should not be returned, should not be sent to the United States, because she faces possibly a lifetime in prison on multiple charges of fraud, and she could provide the U.S. government with information about how the Huawei company relates to Chinese security agencies and engages in espionage and information about infrastructure. So they are really putting on maximum pressure on us to try and get her back. Unfortunately, they refuse to acknowledge that our political leaders do not have the capacity to arbitrarily return a Chinese national who's in the middle of a judicial process here in Canada.
And of course, the wild card in all of this is President Donald Trump, who says that he may use Ms. Meng as a chip, a bargaining chip in a larger U.S.-China trade deal. So who knows? That's a conversation for another day. But for right now, we appreciate your time and your insights, Professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.